This could be the most important moment of our adventuring lives!
Sup, party people? I'm back in the hizzy. Oh, no. Knew it was wrong as soon as I said it. Sorry, that was terrible. Can I get a do-over? Hi, Uncle Scrooge.
Now, that happened much earlier than I expected. Not that I'm complaining. Okay, I usually prefer to review one episode at a time, but I think to do this one properly, I have to review The Golden Spear and Nothing Can Stop Della Duck together. Well then, let's start with The Golden Spear, a pretty decent episode I expected to happen later into the season, to be frank. The reveal that Lunaris is actually evil and plans to invade Earth is not really a surprise. Already caught that one at the end of whatever happened to Della Duck. I was more surprised by the fact that he seems to be the only evil villain, with Penumbra only being suspicious of Della throughout the entire episode, thinking that she is manipulating her fellow Lunarians with her stories of how great everything is on Earth in comparison to the moon. Her stubbornness started to annoy me a bit as the episode progressed, but I do think that her interactions with Della were pretty fun. I simply like Della's continuous attempts to bond with the hostile alien, and it sort of made sense when Lunaris mentioned at the end that Della was so interested in her because she apparently reminded Della of Donald. Now regarding Donald, I do think that the general underutilization of his character hurts what the show is trying to do with him. Don't get me wrong, that he is so stressed out definitely fits his character, but my issue is that you wouldn't exactly know that if you would only know Donald from watching the show. Since we barely get to see him, it's a bit hard to believe that he is more stressed than usual. I think it would work better if Donald would be more involved in the adventures of the show, so that even someone who never saw Donald Duck before would understand that he gets into less than pleasant situations on a regular basis. Now, to be fair, this episode sort of makes up for that by showing a particular bad yet hilarious day for Donald. Especially Huey and Webby summoning a horde of zombies is just hilarious, and we even get to see Donald fighting them with a chainsaw, Army of Darkness style. Now, the whole thing is without blood, but it was still rather unexpected to see him actually use that chainsaw on screen. Just the mere fact that we get to see Donald freaking Duck cutting a zombie in half is in itself hilarious. It was also somewhat interesting to see that it was actually Huey who caused this one. So far he has been portrayed as a careful one. He didn't really get to interact with Webby up to this point either. Next up, he gets dragged into a fight between Dewey, Storkulus and Zeus, as Dewey stole the shoes of Hermes. Yeah, can we please not make him a god, please? But it was a nice reminder that Storkulus moved to Duckburg, because I admittedly kinda forgot that by now. And I also liked seeing Zeus again. And finally, the off-screen adventure with Louie and Scrooge in that alternate dimension. Frankly, I'm mostly disappointed that we didn't get to see what it was like on the other end of that portal. Well, after all that, Scrooge and the triplets decide that Donald needs a vacation to relax. When I was watching the episode, I wasn't exactly thrilled about that. Sure, it's a very nice gesture, but at first it seems like a rather poor excuse to keep him away from the plot. Luckily, Donald is not that lucky and ends up on the moon instead, making it sure that he will be involved in the plot in some way. At the same time, however, it does bother me a little bit that he is the only one who doesn't get to be reunited with Della and instead ends up in captivity. It might be his usual luck, but it does feel a bit unnecessarily cruel. But then again, I get the intention. This allows the show to have one main character on the moon to observe what the Lunarians are up to and moving the plot along on that end. I'm pretty sure that Penumbra will end up helping him, considering that she was rather shocked to learn about Lunaris' plan and might want to make amends, considering that she is responsible for the whole situation. Moreover, I think the showrunners wanted Della to have a peaceful reunion with her children and not have it mixed up with an alien invasion. So having her come back early and basically have Donald take her place allows him to play around with Della for a couple of episodes while still having a main character doing stuff on the moon. And now let's talk about Nothing Can Stop Della Duck. The opening scene is simply handled brilliantly. It is just as funny as it is heartfelt. Della not being sure how to introduce herself and then blowing it with a perfectly timed entrance just after Scrooge announced that he and the kids are going to an adventure is just freaking hilarious. But then we get this very sweet moment in which Scrooge McDuck is about to cry tears of joy, dropping that magic quill. This small moment is just so sweet and shows how important Della actually is to Scrooge. I mean, it's not exactly subtle. He breaks a magic quill that can lead to any treasure on the planet and doesn't even care, as family is the greatest treasure of all. Meeting his long-lost niece again is more worth than anything he can think of, and seeing Scrooge react like that just sells the moment. Well, the rest of the episode is basically about Della trying to bond with her children and be a good mom. The general conflict stems from the fact that Della herself has no idea how to be a mother though, which is somewhat understandable considering that she has no experience in that regard whatsoever, and her overall reckless attitude doesn't help either. Well, and she spent a decade alone on the moon. It was very nice to see that Scrooge showed understanding for his situation and that she simply needs some time to adjust to her new circumstances. Of course, the fact that Della only eavesdropped on the wrong part of this conversation is a bit cliche, but yeah. Perhaps the most interesting thing about this episode, however, is to see how the children react to Della. Huey and especially Dewey are overjoyed to spend some time with their mom. Only Louie doesn't quite know how to react to that. I thought that was a rather interesting angle to take and made sort of sense. He spent his whole life without a mom and made peace with the fact that he will probably never see her, especially since he probably assumed that she died after he learned the truth about the Spear of Selene from Scrooge. So that the whole situation is rather confusing for him is understandable. Not only that, he has a bit of a hard time bonding with her as they appear to have little in common. I already pointed that out when I talked about whatever happened to Della Duck, but personality wise she's much closer to Huey and Dewey, sharing the latter's lust for adventure and the former's ingenuity and being a junior woodchuck. Louie, however, is mostly characterized by his laziness and greed, traits that Della hasn't portrayed yet, not to mention that these are more negative traits anyway, so that he might have some trouble to form a bond with her doesn't really surprise me at all. Luckily, they finally sort things out when Della saves him near the end. Besides that, I really like the small touches, like Della's meeting with Launchpad. Apparently there was a somewhat popular theory that Launchpad is actually the father of the triplets, which I think would be rather stupid, so I'm rather happy that this episode shot that theory down right away by making it apparent that the two have never met before. And Della's reaction to seeing Launchpad was surprisingly hilarious, being furious that Scrooge apparently replaced her with a different pilot. This came sorta out of nowhere, but it was a nice way to draw attention to their shared profession. In any case, all of this comes to a head after she food poisoned, injured and terrified her children and overheard Scrooge saying that she is not a good mom when she sulks about how she only knows how to fight in the garage and accidentally awakens the gold golem she told her children earlier about. It ensues a pretty good action sequence. Della tries to defeat the golem the same way as she did last time, disregarding that she was apparently a child back then and cannot simply climb inside the robot. But then she finds a different way. As Scrooge pointed out, she adapted to the situation. The lesson being that while Della might find it difficult to be a good mom now, that she can adapt to any challenge and will grow into her role as a mother eventually. This adaptability has previously been shown on the moon when she taught herself how to repair the rocket, I suppose. And yeah, that's a pretty good lesson. You need to give people time to learn. You cannot expect them to be perfect from the get-go. In the same vein, you need to accept yourself that you might make some mistakes along the way and don't let them discourage you. And with that being said, let's wrap things up. Both The Golden Spear and Nothing Can Stop Della Duck are great episodes. I consider them somewhat of a two-parter, which is why I reviewed them together, even if they are technically two different stories that immediately follow each other. Della simply sells these episodes. I already liked her in her first proper appearance in Whatever Happened to Della Duck, but these two episodes just emphasize how funny she actually is, and the reunion with her family was just heartwarming. It gave me the feels, as people like to say. Besides that, it was simply very intriguing to see how Della forms a bond with her family and the difficulties she has to face. Just having her being perfect would have been rather lazy writing, so I really appreciate that Della is portrayed as a character that needs to learn. So yeah, I simply love these episodes. But what about you? Did you like these episodes? Anything that bothered you? What are your thoughts on Donald being stranded on the moon now? Let me know in the comments below. I am Tricky Fox, stay foxy.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well. Sometimes you can be too smart to fall. You're a